Darn it, Charles. Frequently when we begin, just now I was looking at that image and I had that, you know, Thus Speaks Zarathustra, whatever that music is for 2001 Space Odyssey. But this is slightly different. This is a Dunce Odyssey. Welcome to the show, Charles.
It's a pleasure to join you from afar. A wonderful poster. We now have, I think, over 1,000 posters that are, uniformly of superb quality.
Thank you.
And that's tough to do because we basically we bounce around ideas. Sometimes the pitch goes well immediately. Sometimes the pitch takes time to come together. But always the art department comes through wonderfully. So thanks for that.
Thank you. And I should say, I can only speak for me, of course, but I think we don't mean to speak ill of the dead. But at the same time, whatever the facts come out to be, you got to be pretty stupid to get into a fight with the cops and think that a weapon will be discharged and you're not going to get shot. So this guy is a dunce.
Right. Well, I have a controversial theory here. And again, I'm not saying that I espouse it, but I think I understand it. So when the colonies were part of the United Kingdom or Britain or whatever you want to call it, we operated under a system where for relatively minor offenses, like stealing one loaf of bread, you were executed. And it wasn't like in other offenses, it wasn't, you were just, your head was cut off. You were hanged, drawn, and quartered, meaning a noose was put around your neck and you were hung almost to the point of death. And you were then revived. The noose was cut down, and then you were strapped to the back of a horse cart and dragged through the streets of whatever place you were located in. And that was not good. The streets were not exactly clean back then. People would throw their garbage and their shit and whatever out the window onto the street. And the streets were not, paved with gold or anything, or even paved. They were kind of uneven. So the process of being dragged behind a horse cart after you're nearly snuffed out with hanging, you're in pretty bad shape. So to relieve you of your misery, you were then cut. Your body was cut into 4 pieces. Your head was cut off. And the reason they did that is that they believed back then that if your body was dismembered in that way, first of all, your heirs could not inherit any property. And you couldn't go to have an afterlife. You'd be miserable. So then, for good measure, they would put your head on a pike outside on the walls of the city. Now, I'm not arguing that we should do that, move to that system. But as a guess, when you faced that kind of punishment, you probably thought twice about stealing a loaf of bread.
Right.
And what we have now is a system in the blue cities and states where we actually have a fugitive from America who's based in communist China, who made a fortune in this country, whose parents, I believe, this Singman guy, his parents were communists. He decided to I think he sold a company for almost $800 million and has been financing the attempted destruction of the United States of America from a base in China. And that man, if we can get Maduro, we should get this man, bring him back, and make an example of all these left-leaning charities who think that it's okay to instigate anarchy across the country. Because, this kind of behavior, it doesn't, yes, you can be an affluent white, female urban liberal. You could be a trust fund kid. You can be out there, think it's great. You make your name in the paper and you agitate, you interrupt famous people, you ask Trump tough questions. But
spray,
the polling, the polling on that's being done, and I distrust polling, but in this case, the results are overwhelmingly saying that large super majorities of all across the political spectrum are in favor of deporting illegal immigrants. Now, this is not, you don't have these people who are out there getting airtime, getting through the producers' decisions to put you on air and getting, ink and magazines and newspapers and stuff like that, these are not representative of what the voters really want here. And Trump, frankly, has done an amazing job closing the border. They say he said himself in this rally, or as he was going to the rally in Iowa, people said he couldn't close the border. Biden, and you'll remember all the useful idiots around Biden. Biden didn't qualify as being useful or an idiot. He was trying to be useful, but he was, wasn't. If he studied for the rest of his life, he might become an idiot. They all said we can't fix the situation at the border without comprehensive immigration legislation, where we would give whatever you call it, asylum or immunity, to all the illegal immigrants that are already inside the country. That was the line of Democrats. It's the Republicans who are responsible for this mess with the open border because they won't cave on giving citizenship to all the people who've already snuck into the country. That was their position. Trump comes in, and as he said in Iowa, he's being told that not one illegal immigrant has gotten across the border in 9 months, not one. And he didn't get legislation passed. So, on this issue in Minneapolis, it's reminiscent of George Floyd. It's reminiscent of, all these cases where there's a narrative that needs to be constructed, and George Floyd is a saint. You're out there on bended knee, you got Black Lives Matter. This guy, Preddy, is supposedly, that's how mean, it's ridiculous, this and that and the other thing. No, you've got to let people understand you do not have a right to get your way in the United States using violence. You just don't have that right. There should be, if I were running ICE or whatever, and there were these rallies, I'd say, listen, you show up at one of these rallies with a handgun, a concealed weapon, you start engaging in any signs of violence. We're going to put you away. We're going to go through a legal process. You're going away for 20 years. And you're going to go to a place where you're going to take large rocks and break them into small rocks. If you're good. If you're not good, you're going to go to solitary confinement. And you're going to go through a process. You can be represented. It's not going to be like J6.
Well, that's what I was going to say. This is basically what they did to J6. They didn't even give him due process, and none of those guys had guns.
Right. And so, in this instance, all that's happening with the coverage in legacy media, and Obama and Clinton and Biden coming out of his hole to bemoan what Homan and the ICE people are doing here. All they're doing is confirming the view that these people are in fact dunces, dangerous dunces. The notion that Obama spent 8 years as president of the United States. Obama drone struck and killed an American citizen outside the country with no due process at all. And where was the outcry there? He's a saint, they were saying. Give him the Nobel Peace Prize so he can kill more people without due process. I mean, and Bill Clinton, one of the first things that moron did with that moron Janet Reno is incinerate, I think it was 90 plus children in Waco, Texas. They didn't need to do that. There was no due process there. There was no outcry. And Bill Clinton, of all people, is going to get up. We still don't know what he did with Epstein. He's going to get up and say that he can sit in moral judgment on anything?
Right. No, absolutely outrageous, Charles. But just one slight correction. I think we should give Biden credit in that Putin would say he would come in second in a contest of idiots.
No, I mean, think about where we are now. We have, all the preening morons, Meet the Depressed and those kind of on Sunday, can get on and get airtime saying, with Trump derangement syndrome. Molly Ringwald, who was funny in 16 Candles, or was good in 16 Candles decades ago, has apparently said that anybody who supports Trump is a fascist and will be tried and convicted for treason in 2029 and afterwards. I mean, listen, Molly,
where does she
obviously
get off?
when you were doing your pictures, you didn't study American history. I mean, that's just a preposterous statement. And Hollywood is blown up. You haven't done much lately. Forget about your political views. They're shameful. It's just ridiculous. And the idea that the left, this is like, what the Vikings did. They would come year after year, beginning in the 700 AD time frame, 750, 790, or whatever. They would come down from wherever they were. People are not exactly sure where their bases were because the borders have changed so much in modern Scandinavia. So, but they would come down and they would show up in a village, and they'd say, unless you give them demands, we're going to, rape your women, take your children, and steal everything in the town. Unless you give us, they call it Danegeld, but I'm not sure there was a Denmark back then. And that's in essence what these people are trying to do. With these left-leaning NGOs, we're going to have this on Friday, apparently your time, there's going to be some mass protest across the country against ICE. And they're apparently going to take children and have children, out there behaving outrageously, daring ICE to arrest these children. This is not okay. And the fact that it's being done through, in many cases, ostensible public charities, this is a time for Jeanine Pirro and others who can stand up to make examples of these fake charities. I mean, the Singman's money that's going to finance this, does he control, or do his agents control, a domestic U.S. charity? If they do, hunt this fucker down. Hunt him down. He's an enemy. You don't have the right to do this. And the fact, and you look at the course of what's happened, and the George Floyd protests were manufactured, totally manufactured. Look at the hysteria that happened there. The creation of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a sinful and disgusting fake set of organizations where the leaders of whom stole tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. How come those people aren't put in prison? And what I would do if this Mayor Fry thinks that in Minneapolis, he and his family, working with that moron Tampon Tim and others, can defy the federal government. I would say, look, we're going to send 2,500 whatever it is ICE people to Minneapolis, and then I'd show up with 25,000, and I put 2,500 around the governor's mansion and 2,500 around the mayor's residence. And I would use the full. Don't tell me that our whatever you want to call them, security services, don't have the ability to look at every single message back and forth between these instigators, the funders of same, and these government officials. Don't tell me that they can't do that, because I don't believe that. I believe that they have the ability in real time to know exactly what these co-conspirators are doing to create anarchy across the country. And I would make an example of Fry and Waltz, both of them, and anyone else who wants. This lieutenant governor in Minnesota. Any one of these people want to stand up as candidate for some high office somewhere, said when he gets into, if he wins as attorney general, I think it is somewhere, he's going to have Trump executed. Oh, really?
How can you even say
back
that
in the
without
day,
the Secret Service going right over there?
Yeah, back in the day, I mean, imagine if somebody said that about Obama when he was president. What would have happened, right? And remember that Trump, there have been 2 assassination attempts that we know of against Trump so far. One nearly got him. And so Trump is being, in my mind, remarkably patient. Remarkably, and if one were to discover that the legacy media was coordinating, knew about these protests in advance, the way they showed up at Roger Stone's house on the raid, if the legacy media operating with the benefit of FCC licenses is stoking and instigating anarchy, then I would pull their licenses, through whatever process you have to go through. But that's the direction I go. This is not, I mean, it'd be one thing. I mean, I wouldn't be in favor of violence if the people in the streets were 80-20 supported by the polls. But I see, how do you say it's okay to interfere in lawful operations of law enforcement, in the ways that these people, the devilish ways that these people are doing this.
But Charles,
You
they
know,
haven't even been able to charge Don Lemon. How are they gonna? I mean, it's kind of sad, actually.
well, yeah, there can't be a system. This is another area where I think Trump is not being tough enough. We cannot have a system, and indeed the system was never one, where there's a president of the United States who's in charge of a set of policies and the executive branch of government, but any minute step that the president wants to take in any of the 3,000 plus counties in the United States can be stopped by different levels of judges. This is ridiculous, preposterous.
This was a magistrate judge, and I just realized this little detail. Did you know that Abby Lowell is representing Lemon?
Again, these guys are too obvious. Is Mark Elias involved in this?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
it's going to be Norm all over this, obviously. Why haven't they just scoop Norm up and put him in freaking jail? Why not arrest him and charge him with charity fraud? There's a million things that you and I have pointed out that they could ding Norm on, and they're just not doing it. Fire Pam Bondi, put me in there, give me a weekend, and I would just not sleep. There'd be so many indictments you could choke a friggin' horse.
Well, again, the strategy has to be, where do you indict them, right? Because you're never going to get a fair trial. And this is Norm Eisen himself. Either Weissman or Eisen or both, told Jerry Corsi, when they were trying to railroad him, they said, listen, we are going to try you in Washington, D.C., where you are not popular, and you will be convicted, and the judge is going to throw you in prison and throw away the key. And Corsi stood his ground. Not many people would do that. But
as I recall, that was Andrew Weissman. Oh, no, it was Aaron. There was some Weissman
deputy, but I think at the direction of Weissman, it was. And we just can't. This idea that elections don't, when you go to the polls, you have to say, we want to count every vote cast. But in reality, what you believe is elections don't matter because the hard left controls the bureaucracy and the administration of justice and taxation. You can't have a system like that. And nobody voted for that. Let's put it that way. And so I think watching this, we have a collection of dunces around the world, not just in the United States, but especially in Europe. We have an unelected bureaucracy in the EU. There's a case I'll just briefly touch on here where there's a lefty, pro-Palestinian lefty, who is, I think, of Turkish and German origin, who arbitrarily by the EU, this is written up in Zero Hedge, arbitrarily by the EU, this guy was told that what he was doing was, promoting the Palestinian issue in the eyes of the EU bureaucrats was helping Russia. Don't tell me how that works, but that's what they said. So the remedy was they canceled all of his ability to access any bank account. He had 2 young children, no ability to get money. And he was also told, supporters were told that if you support him, the same fate will happen to you. And all of this with no trial, no ability for him to tell his side of the story. All of this happened by an unelected bureaucracy in the EU. I certainly didn't pay tax money fighting the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe to see Germany and the EU be worse than it was under the Stasi.
Exactly.
This is you could look at this and say, well, it's just a portion of the EU. There are other parts that are good. No, this is a fundamental issue. You have to have the right, the rights that are enshrined in our Bill of Rights. If you're an ally and you don't have those rights, so your citizens don't have those rights, then why should our taxpayers support you in any way?
Yeah. Just briefly, Charles, I'm pretty sure the guy we were just thinking of is Andrew Weissman deputy Aaron Zelinsky, who directly threatened Corsi.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, you have to have, and the other thing that's interesting is that it used to be in our country that you had that all elections were by secret ballot for exactly the reason that Molly Ringwald doesn't seem to understand. You have an absolute right. If you want to vote for this idiot, the mayor, you have every right to do that, and you don't have to tell people that you've done it. And I have no right to know who you voted for. But we can't have a system where people try to intimidate you and say, "Well, oh, okay, you voted for Trump, so when I get into power, I'm going to have you try you for treason, where the penalty is death." You're out of your mind, Molly Ringwald.
I'm pretty sure you could fill a book with what Molly Ringwald doesn't know. Speaking of stupid mayors, Charles, it wasn't long ago that the stupidest mayor of all, Mayor McDumb, Zoran Mamdani, says that New York City is facing a fiscal crisis worse than the Great Recession, and that you got to hike taxes on the wealthy and the most successful corporations. So, you can already hear the snowplows digging out the cars and people leaving in droves.
Right. Exactly. And, actually, and I read, I don't know if it's true, that there's several, Continental Grain is based in New York, but Cargill, another big grain trading operation, and one of the biggest in the world, was until recently based in Minnesota, and they just announced, I think, they're moving their headquarters to Texas.
Oh,
too
dangerous.
There comes a point, and I think it needs to go to the Supreme Court. There needs to be a precedent. Mayor Fry and Gavin Newsom, keeping California in the World Health Organization, they have no right to direct the foreign policy of the United States. These mayors and they're the president's duty to protect national security trumps, as it were, governors' views, mayors' views, other state and local officials' views on everything. And that principle needs to be made clear. Zoran Mamdani can't say that, while Trump is in charge of foreign policy, Netanyahu better be careful because he's going to have him arrested and then flip to the International Criminal Court. Fuck you, Mayor. You have no right to do that. And there needs to be a Supreme Court precedent set on this so that these hotheads who live in places where, like New York City, where they believe there's an unending flow of tax revenue that's going to come in, no matter how poor a job they do in running a city or state, they need to be taught some serious lessons. Starting with, if Trump could do it, I would freeze all federal funding to New York City and state. So you think you have a Great Recession problem now? Try making ends meet. See how high you have to raise taxes when we don't give you any money from the federal government, because you are making the defense of this country manifestly more difficult. People around the world understand that if they can get to New York City, that you, the mayor, and this moron Hochul are going to make it impossible to, or as close to impossible as they can, to have any form of justice and have these illegals and criminal illegals deported.
It's interesting. I hadn't seen this. What's that?
Go ahead.
Well, I hadn't seen this response from Netanyahu where he says he is going to visit New York despite threats to arrest him. See when that happens.
Yeah, I don't think there are New York City cops tough enough to try to take down the people who would be protecting Netanyahu.
I think they train with the Mossad, the New York City Police Department. But, Charles, we're at a moment here where we're about to head over to the First Amendment Forum. I hope that people will join us for the rest of the conversation on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. There's still a lot to discuss. We've only just begun to enter this Dunce Odyssey of 2006. So stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back in just 5 minutes. And